Hello and welcome to Grassroots Takeover.
Hello and welcome to Grassroots Takeover. You're listening to Ali and Mark on K2K.
I'm sorry, that's not how we rehearsed it. Can you do that again, please? I'm going to start again. I'm going to go a little down and you go a little up. Hello and welcome to Grassroots Takeover.
Hello and welcome to Grassroots Takeover. You're listening to Ali and Mark on K2K. Now I'm going to be groovy this week because last week I was like really hectic and you could hear me like hyperventilating because my ribs were all bashed up from Balcombe.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be all treacly this week.
Grassroots Takeover, the show that privileges the people fighting back and making a difference in the world and doing amazing kick-ass actions for peace and justice and all that jazz. So
millions of which we've got to talk about this week because there's so much happening coming up right at the moment. There's been loads of stuff the last few days. There's loads of stuff over the next week. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. On today's show, we've got, the first part, we're going to talk about lots and lots of actions. There's been developments in Balcombe from the Reclaim the Power camp, and they're upping the ante against Quadrilla. We'll talk about that. We've got the DPAC Week of Action, which if you don't know about, you really should, and hopefully we'll give you some information on that.
Reclaim Our Futures, that's called.
Yep. We've got activists protesting against, that old spectre of nuclear weapons, and they're pretty serious about it. They're blockading. This is all happening in the UK, all right beneath our noses. There's the Dicey Arms Fair, and that's going to start happening next week. Biggest arms fair in the world, where they sell all the merchandise and weaponry, send them all over the world, and then declare how much they're into peace and democracy. We'll talk about that. And there's also
a huge anti-fascist demo on Saturday. There's an EDL thing happening in Tower Hamlets, so all the anti-fascists are going down to Tower Hamlets on Saturday.
And that's just the first half of the show. That's just the bit we're going to talk straight after the first song. After that, we're going to talk to Ian Chamberan, who's from Stop the War, and they've been, as you probably all know, battling to stop and prevent the war in Syria, and they're doing a bloody good job so far. We're going to speak to him over the phone in the second half. So I suppose, what do you reckon? First song?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, we're going to kick the show off with an old classic from Basement Jaxx and a few wise words from one of our beloved leaders. Enjoy.
Mr. President, can you assure the American people that the United States will not get bogged down in yet another war halfway around the world?
If the United States stands by its core interests that affects the entire global economy, a long conflict can have a positive impact on our core values.
Welcome back to Grassroots Takeover with Ali and Mark on K2K. You can find us on Facebook, Grassroots Takeover page on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter, Groots Takeover on Twitter, or you can email us, grassrootstakeover@gmail.com. So now we kind of have a list of all the cool and groovy stuff that's happening at the moment, which we're going to tell you about. So if you're interested in getting involved in some action, there's a large variety of things that you can choose between, depending on what you want to do over the next week or so.
And it should be noted as well that this, we did have a vague idea about talking about these things, but it took us about 5 minutes to research even just this much. If we put in about a couple hours, we probably could have actions all over the UK and just stuff kicking off everywhere. So.
The list is just going on, which is brilliant because the UK needs to stand up. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the Balcombe rolling blockade. We've been down at Balcombe recently. There's been a hell of a lot of stuff happening at Balcombe, and now they're calling it the rolling blockade. So what's happening with that, Mark?
The rolling blockade. So Balcombe, just to catch up, it's the Quadrilla site. It's down beneath London. It's in the countryside. It's where Quadrilla, a big fracking company, wants to drill big holes in the ground, and the community have been camping for, I think it's literally like day 40 now. And still really lovely camp. People are, gaining a lot from it. They're learning about themselves. They're protesting. They're developing their skills. And most importantly, they're preventing a fracking site. And it's where Reclaim the Power was, a big activist camp to support that movement. But anyways, enough about the past. What's happening now is the Balcombe campers have said that they want to start a rolling blockade.
What does that mean?
Well, I'm going to interpret what they mean. Before, they were linking arms, and when the trucks would come to go into the Quadrilla site past the camp, they would link arms. And unfortunately, though, they, very peaceful people. They're not they're not naturally akin to confronting the police and lots of corporate power. So they would generally get pushed out of the way. The trucks would go through, and that's what they've been doing as a protest for quite a while. So after Reclaim the Power, and because they the rolling blockade is going to happen from the 1st of September, so 3 days ago, until the 28th. That's the period that still remains for Quadrilla to have a license to drill. And so they're basically saying, let's up the ante. Let's actually put our bodies on the line now, put our, in some senses, liberties on the line. There's already been, I think, 3 arrests at this point, maybe more, but there's been a guy who... 3
recent arrests, because there's been tons of arrests before.
Oh, yeah, totally. No, I didn't mean to mislead you there. Sorry, Ali. It's there's been lots and lots of arrests, probably up to 40 or something by now. But
as if that's a good thing.
Well, says that the powers that be don't like what you're doing, and that's always a good sign in the Grassroots Takeover books. So anyways, there's been about 3 recent arrests. There's been a guy who you can see it on Frackoff's page. If you go to Frackoff on the internet, Google it. I'm not sure what the this and that is, but it's Frackoff, and they have updates. And there's been a guy who sat up on one of the trucks and wouldn't get down, delayed it for, I think, most of the day, at least several hours. He's probably been arrested. There's a lady recently who just, I think yesterday or something, who chained or locked herself to one of the gates, and that slowed down the operation for a long time. So yeah, I mean, the rolling blockade just means every single day we're going to up the ante and actually get in the way of these trucks, rather than, because I guess they've got to the point where they realize, the powers that be aren't listening. They're going to do what they think they can get away with, so we have to respond by being more militant, and it seems to be working so far. So they're calling upon any group, any individual, any person who feels inspired by what they're doing to come down and join the rolling blockade. I suppose you don't necessarily have to subscribe yourself up to getting arrested if that's not your thing. You can be activist support. You can feed them nuts and bananas while they're sat chained up to something.
There's all sorts of things you can do. You can report on it. You can support the medical help or anything like that. There's a million things you can do. So if you want to go down there and get involved, it's a really beautiful place. It's a really lovely camp. It's a really popular and useful cause. So really worth going down to Balcombe.
Yeah, and you've only got another month, so I'll try that persuasive technique. It's while stocks last. It's get it while you can. That's history moves on. You're only going to get to say I was down in Balcombe fighting the fracking companies for another month. So get down there if you haven't been there already.
Because Balcombe is the first big fracking protest in England, isn't it? So there's been
protests, but it's probably the one that's most famous.
On site, yeah. And the fracking thing is just going to go crazy from here on in, I would think. There's 1,000 projected fracking sites in the UK that are due to be fracked. So, yeah.
It's going to be mental. It's going to look like Blade Runner. There's going to be like pipes and stuff sticking out of everything and flames, and there's going to be like massive like screens with Japanese people on singing songs at us. You're not seeing Blade Runner?
No.
Oh, wow.
No, I probably have. I usually fall asleep in films.
It just makes me want to put my head in my hands. Anyway, so let's talk about, because so that's Balcombe. Go to frack off. Go to type Balcombe fracking protest. Get involved in whatever way you can. So now let's go to another thing happening right at the very same time. DPAC, Disabled People Against Cuts, militant activists who are fighting for the rights of disabled people, and they have said for a long time they're going to do a week of action in September, and that's what they're doing. So why don't you tell everyone about that?
Okay, so the DPAC Week of Action is well underway. It's already been happening for a few days. Yesterday, they locked themselves on to the front of the BBC and blockaded the BBC. And I think the basic principle for doing that was around this idea that disabled hate crime has risen in an absolutely appalling way. Disability hate crime, I mean to say, has risen. Have I said what DPAC is? Have we talked about that? DPAC is Disabled People Against Cuts.
Yeah, I explained.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So they locked onto the BBC yesterday and blockaded the BBC because disability hate crime has risen horrendously over the last few years. It's doubled in the last 2 years, and it had already doubled in the 2 years before that. And a lot of the reasoning behind this is the propaganda that comes out on the media calling disabled people scroungers and supporting welfare cuts. So there's so many welfare cuts that have been aimed at disabled people. You've got ATOS and the Work Capability Assessment, which is a horrendous tick box assessment service which a lot of people with mental health problems and disabilities have to go through, which is just a way of finding them fit for work and kicking them off benefit in an unreasonable way. And it's a horrendously stressful process, but many people probably know about that because it's a national scandal. They've closed the government have closed, or the DWP have closed the ILF, the Independent Living Fund, which is a fund which allows supports people with the highest support needs, so people that are quite severely disabled, to participate in society in the way that they have the right to on an equal basis with non-disabled people. So that's been fucked off. It's going to be entirely closed. I think by 2015 it's already being scaled down now. DLA, Disabled Living Allowance, has been changed on to PIP, personal something fucking payment. But anyway, all of these things just basically mean that welfare cuts have been aimed at disabled people primarily. So in fact, disabled people are paying back 9 times more of the deficit than non-disabled people in terms of the money that's been taken away from them.
So wait a minute, just spell that out for me, because I need some time to get things into my head. So disabled people are paying
9 times more than non-disabled people back into to pay for the deficit in terms of the money that's been taken away from them. And the people with the highest support needs in the community, so severely disabled people, are paying back 19 times more. So
I was going to say, because I don't tend to get this information from the BBC.
No, you don't tend to get this information from the BBC, which is the point.
But that's what it's like. I mean, I remember when we were in the Bank of Ideas, and it was a really just go back in 2011. I'm in the Bank of Ideas, and this is a social centre. Anyways, I won't go into it. It's a space for radical organising.
To do with Occupy London.
Yeah, and we all got freaked out because there was a real move towards perhaps going to war with Iran. They had, I don't know if you remember the period, but there was a moment where everyone kind of went like that, and because there was like really high tensions, and there was like maybe even some shots fired here and there, and we thought, next couple of weeks it's all going to be kicking off. And so the talk for 48 hours, everyone I spoke to in London, every conversation was like Iran this, Iran that, war this, peace act, got to mobilize and all that. We switched on the BBC to see where everything was at in the mainstream, and we just clicked onto this thing where it said, and in other news, a new 50 pence piece has been put on the market where the controversially the offside rule is explained on one side of the 50 pence piece, right? And we're in this massive room with about 70 people all sweating and like, you know, shaking and like listening as if it's like, you know, time for war. And you know, this guy in the suit is just like, and some people have complained that the offside rule is a bit of an irrelevant thing to put on a coin, but you know, a lot of people reckon it's a good British tradition. We were just sat there feeling like we'd sort of landed in a goldfish bowl.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The contrast between what people were talking about and what the BBC was talking about was so overwhelming. But anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, so what's happening in regards to disability benefits in this country is in a country of appalling government policies that are happening at the moment. This thing about aiming welfare cuts at the disabled is probably one of the most disgraceful things that's happening. And these ideas are propagated on the mainstream media, and disability hate crime has doubled and doubled again over recent years. You know, you can read the stories, and people are being disabled people are being spat at in the street. I mean, it sounds unbelievable, but
we know them. We know these people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's you know, it's not something we're reading about. People are telling us.
Yeah. And people have been killed and abused. Anyway, so Deepak went to the BBC yesterday, and they locked onto the BBC and they blockaded the BBC to ask the BBC for more balanced and fair coverage of what we would call the war on the disabled, which is happening in this country. So big up Deepak. They've done loads of other wicked stuff. They've got stuff going on most days at the moment. But if you would like to get involved with Deepak, which would be a very good thing to do, the biggest Deepak Day of the current week of action, the name of the current week of action is Reclaim Our Futures, and the biggest day of it is the last day, which is Wednesday, this Wednesday coming up. What date is that going to be?
This Wednesday?
Like the 5th or the 4th, or the 4th. I think it's the 4th. So this Wednesday anyway, something like the 4th of September.
What, tomorrow?
Is that tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh, it's tomorrow. Oh, wow. Okay.
Lucky we told you.
Yeah. So Deepak are going to meet in themed blocks in Westminster. And if you want to find out about this, probably the best way to do it is on Facebook. You can go to Deepak DPAC Freedom Drive and find out all the different informations. You can meet with a different block. Some of the blocks are Department for Education to oppose government attacks on inclusive education, Department of Energy and Climate Change, if you're angry about the numbers of disabled people living in fuel poverty, Department for Transport to challenge inaccessible transport, Department of Health to defend our NHS and demand our right to levels of social care and support enabling
basically
choice.
All the really
the
obviously
whole lot,
important
all the
things,
ways
yeah.
in which disabled people are being attacked. So
and I got to say, I've been on, I think, maybe 4 or 5 Deepak actions now, or even as well as that, actions that have just included Deepak, and I've always enjoyed it. They've always been great. Like
Deepak actions are really good.
You know, and you know, if you're one of these people, you sat there thinking, well, I'm not disabled, I don't really know about those kind of issues, then perfect. You know, go down there, meet the people, you know, get involved. You find these kind of separations between able-bodied, disabled people is completely fictitious anyway. It's good to actually do just for that, you know, because they have a great way of bringing groups together. Yeah.
It rocks. I love Deepak. I work with them all the time. Cool. So Deepak tomorrow, Wednesday, 12:45 in Westminster. Go to Deepak Freedom Drive on Facebook if you want to find out how to hook up with them.
Right, we've got to move on because there's more.
Okay.
There's more to talk about.
There's more. There's so much going on this week.
Okay.
The next thing, Earth First. What's happening with Earth First, Mark?
All I can do is give you some information because I only found out about this recently. I did know about it, but I totally forgot about it again and found out about it again recently. Earth First, hardcore, non-violent, direct action, environmental people. Great stuff. You can find them on the internet. They do regular updates about all sorts of things. They do regular actions. And they have reported just on their website on the 2nd of September, they report 21 arrests in West Berkshire. A camp was set up. I didn't know about it.
Nobody can pronounce English places in Berkshire. Anyway,
I can't read or speak or anything, you know. So it's good that there's people like you around to correct me. Yeah, Ellie's Guide to Life. So in Berkshire. There was a camp, and I did know about this. So I'm actually gutted I forgot to go, but I did put it in my mental notes. I think it was when we were in Peace News camp.
Okay.
But yeah, they assembled a camp you're seeing this theme pop up. Camps of activists getting together, training each other, learning from each other, and culminating in forms of non-violent direct action that can impact the issues. Their issue was nuclear. Was it weapon? It was a company that builds nuclear warheads, I think, for submarines. Maybe it doesn't build the whole warhead, maybe it just builds bits. But basically, yes, this is a company without which we wouldn't have warheads for nuclear submarines. This is probably part of the whole move to bring in a whole new generation of nuclear warheads for the UK. Completely illegal, completely goes against everything we say we stand for, and everything we tell other nations not to do. But anyways, yeah, they had 21 arrests because they were blockading roads, they were shutting the operations down, and it's just another testament to where things are at in this society.
So if you're into anti-nuclear, you can still go down there and get involved. Is it still down there?
I don't think the camp's still there. If you wanna learn about it, you can find information on Earth First. They're a good group to find out about. But yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing campaign. I think it's like Plowshares, Trident Plowshares, and CND probably knows about it, and all these other things.
Okay, bonus.
Yeah, it's all good. So I can't talk about that in too much detail without getting it totally wrong.
Okay, and the next thing is Dicey
Arms Fair. Money. Yeah.
So the Dicey Arms Fair happens in London every 2 years. Is that correct? Every 2 years?
Every 2 years, yeah. And they bring in warships. Shall I explain what it is?
Yeah.
So it's like if you were going to go to, it's at the XL Centre, which is near Canary Wharf. Just to give you a context, the second biggest event that the XL hosts is like for mother care, I think, or it's like some big baby market thing where they sell like baby stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. like stuff that people with babies would be interested in, just to contrast it. But their biggest event is the Dicey Arms Fair, and that's where you get all the latest lethal weapons technology, all the latest drone technology, all the latest tanks and artillery equipment and small firearms and armor for oppressive police forces and armored personnel carriers and just landmines, barbed wire. I mean, the whole works.
Tear gas.
Oh, tear gas, yeah, you name it. I mean, like laser guided this and whatever. And you walk in, and we actually did a show all about it. So I won't go into too much detail. I think it's called Stop. What did we call the show?
I can't remember. We interviewed Sarah from Stops the Arms.
Yeah, we got a show called Takeover the Arms Fair, I think it was.
Okay.
And you can get that on the Facebook if you want to learn more. But anyway, yeah, massive arms fair. It hosts. I found this out recently. Do you want some factoids?
Yeah, go.
It will host over the week. It will host in London 28,000 arms dealers.
What?
28,000.
What, like people?
Yeah.
I didn't know there was 28,000 arms dealers.
Yeah, and there'll be I think it's 1,400 companies at least. Like,
wow.
It's absolutely huge. It's the world's biggest arms event.
Yeah.
This is the Oscars for arms dealers.
For murder.
Yeah, for murder and death and all that kind of stuff. This is another thing. I did mention this. It's a good, I correct. We mentioned on the previous show that I just talked about that there is a Department of Civil Servants that we pay for, the UK people. We pay for, and all they do is focus on how to promote arms exports from the UK.
Yeah.
And we pay for that. And I assumed in my naivety that it was probably about 30 odd people. It's actually 170 civil servants, wages, resources. You imagine how much money that is, that we pay for. And it's just to promote arms exports. Anyways, the Dicey Arms Fair starts on Monday the 9th, and so there's an enormous, there's a whole week of action scheduled on every single day, and there's more actions being announced like every so often. Can we get the list up? Can we get the list of actions?
Yeah, there you go. So each day on Stop the Arms Fair.
So blimey, okay. So it starts with there's on the 6th of September there's a vigil outside the Vince Cable constituency office. On the 7th of September, on the Saturday, this coming Saturday, there's a musical protest against the Dicey Arms Fair. That's with loads and loads of groups from East London, I think, who live around that area. So they have a personal hatred for the arms fair.
Mm-hmm.
You've also got on the 8th of September, this is kind of the big day, you've got two things. You've got Occupy versus the Arms Fair, which is going to be an enormous mass action to actually block and attempt to shut down the Arms Fair.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's pretty exciting. So, and it's kind of what needs to be done, really, isn't it?
Yep.
You've also got On the same day, you've got Bikes Not Bombs, Critical Mass. If you don't know Critical Mass, bunch of crazy cyclists who take over the roads and shut everything down just with the power of lots and lots of bikes. And so this is an offshoot of them, Bikes Not Bombs. They're
I
going to be
love
there.
Critical Mass. I don't know what it is. When Critical Mass turns up, it just makes me feel good. Just all the millions of bikes coming
The
together.
first time I
Just
saw
into it.
Critical Mass, I have to admit my ignorance. I came down from the north to get involved in the Occupy movement in London, and the first time I heard of their existence when they showed up at St Paul's, and
Oh,
just
I
these
remember
thousands
that.
of
It
bikes,
was
and I was like,
so
"What the hell is this?" It was, "Oh, it's Critical Mass."
And there was shit. What are them things called that you sort of stand up on and like, you know, you go along like that and scoot your foot? What's that called?
The what?
Like kids have got them. It's like a thing with a thing like that, and you sort of go along like that.
I
You can't
don't know.
see it.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a scooter.
Does anybody know? Can anyone tell her? The listeners out there could see what Ali was doing.
Kids have them.
Anyways,
They had tons of people on them anyway. It was
so
really
yeah,
cool.
I mean, I hope we're getting a Critical Mass is awesome. We love them. So, and if you've got a bike, I mean, you know, cool, get involved. Bikes Not Bombs. I'm reading all this off the Stop the Arms Fair website, by the way. So if you want to learn more, it's a place to go. On the 9th of September, it's a special, I think this is right, there's a special Drones Day. They got a whole day devoted to drones.
Oh, yeah, Drones Day.
It's an extra day.
Wow.
They're actually adding it on because they don't normally have it, because drones have just skyrocketed in popularity. And this is true. We mentioned this in the previous show, but I think it's mind-boggling.
Oh,
If you're an
yeah.
arms dealer there, you can actually have a go.
Yeah.
You can fly one. There's a, you know, like the geeky dad who would like stand
Yeah.
in the field with his little airplane, not let his son have a go on it. It's
Yeah.
like that. Like there's some guy who'll show you how to do it. So yeah, so they got the Drones Day. They've got more candlelit visuals. They've got actions to greet the arms dealers as they're actually going in there, you know, and presumably have a word with them, have a stern word. We got something called Arms Dealer Speed Dating on the 10th of September.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Another Critical Mass action a week later. I mean, it's just every single day. Like the list, I'm reading the list down, and I can't even talk about it all because there's too much.
But the big one to go to is the 8th. That's the one they really want the numbers to come up to, isn't it? The 8th of September. Occupy
Yeah.
versus the Arms Fair, 12 p.m. near the Excel Centre in central London.
Yeah,
No, it's not in
and-
central London, is it?
No. The meetup point is at the Excel Centre in East London,
In
and I
East
think
London.
there's more information to be released closer to the date. You can find
Yeah.
Occupy versus the Arms Fair on Facebook and all the places like that. And it's going to combine with Critical Mass. There's going to be campaign against the arms trade there. There's going to be like groups from Turkey, groups from Brazil. There's going to be Syrian activists. There's all sorts. And just to mention, a lot of people probably know this, but you know, just in this crisis moment of like of nearly invading Syria over alleged use of chemical weapons, gas, it's just come to light that the UK has been dishing out the munitions and equipment necessary to produce the gas in the first place while the civil war was going on. So it's like, there's a massive civil war out there. What they need is chemical nerve gas. Oh, someone might have used it. Why don't you go and bomb them more?
Yeah.
None of it makes any sense, does
None
it?
of it makes any sense. Anyway,
If you feel that way, then come up on the 8th and Occupy versus the Arms Fair. That's the place to be.
And anyway, we should probably get on with it, shouldn't we?
And we got something else.
There's a massive anti-fasc demo this weekend. Anti-fascists, the EDL are marching in Tower Hamlets. So there's people coming from all over the world. I know people that have got people coming to stay with them from God knows where to oppose the EDL, the English Defence League, on Saturday.
Yeah, man, if you're one of these people who just works and gets bored at the weekend, and you fancy meeting some new people, go to an anti-fascist demo. You're going to meet all the anti-fascists.
It'll
They're
be
great.
really fun.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, socialise. You can, learn all about like how to end fascism in the UK. Have a good old pint afterwards.
If you want to find out more, and if you want to do some anti-fascist stuff on Saturday, go to antifascistnetwork.wordpress.com.
All right, well, that's we're going to have to shoot off, aren't we? We're going to have to move. So,
yes,
because we want to call Ian Chamberlain from Stop the War.
Stop the War.
And he's a busy man at the moment, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Are we doing Electric Avenue?
We are. There's an absolutely lovely version of the classic song Electric Avenue that's just come out by Dave Randall and Abayoye. It's Abayoye and Randall, a new version of Electric Avenue.
Cool.
Now in the street there is violence and so much work to be done. No place to hang out sun. We're gonna walk down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. We're gonna walk down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Working so hard like a soldier, can't afford a thing on TV. Deep in my heart I abhor ya, can't get food for the kids. We're gonna walk down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. We're gonna walk down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Who is to blame in one country? Never can get to the one. Capitalism's not working, we still can't feed everyone. We're gonna walk down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. We're gonna walk down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Dark side of town, we're gonna walk down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. We're gonna walk down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. We're gonna walk down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. We're gonna walk down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher.
Wow, that was quite a touching piece.
It's such a beautiful song. By Ian Randall, Electric Avenue. That is the new single from, that's their debut single actually, from the new duo.
You kind of get the feel of the musical differences when you hear like dubstep versions of the Israelites, or things like that's usually coming from me. When you get like these tender things, that hit you in all those deep dark places, that's usually Ali.
It's because I'm so connected and present.
So we're going to speak to Ian Chamberan. He's not a famous person. We don't really do famous people, but he's a cool person.
We're going to speak to Ian from the Stop the War Coalition about some of the amazing achievements of Stop the War recently in relation to the attempted attack on Syria.
Mm-hmm. Yep, he's a hardcore activist. He's one of a kind. He's our mate. So where do I plug in this?
There.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Ian Chamberlain, light of my life, burning sun in my night sky. How are you doing, darling?
I'm brilliant, thank you.
Good. Thanks for coming on the show today. I think what we'd like to ask you first is just a little bit about you and a little bit about your activist journey and who you are. So, who are you, Ian?
So, yes, my name's Ian Chamberlain, and I suppose I got on the sort of activist front, so to speak. When I was at university, I started doing some anti-nuclear campaigning. I was getting arrested at Faslane in Scotland, doing blockades and things like that. And
we were just talking about that. People are doing that at the camp in Berkshire.
Oh yeah, the sort of nuclear, where they prepare some of the nuclear materials.
Yep, indeed. So carry on.
Yeah, so I continued the journey at university, got very interested in Palestine, had a friend who was a Jewish Zionist, so I heard one perspective, and then went along to a meeting from the Muslim Society and heard a very different perspective. Ended up going out there with the wonderful Ali.
Who?
And yeah, I guess the rest is history. And when we got back from Palestine, I was part of the Occupy movement, and now I work for the Stop the War Coalition.
Via 3 months in Hebron.
Oh yeah, via 3 months in Hebron. Yeah. It's quite easy. I don't know why it's easy to forget that.
Yeah, it's because it happened straight after
probably the greatest experience.
Yeah.
Well, you see, one of the things, Ian, is that we don't tend to pride ourselves on deep analysis and political facts and things on Grassroots Takeover. It's not one of our strengths. You got to know where your strength is.
Oh no, I think you phoned the wrong person.
Right. No, well, you see, that's the point. We're not really going to ask you to talk about in-depth international issues to do with Syria and all these kind of things, because it's coming out of the walls at the moment. You can find it all over the place. We were going to talk about issues to do with the anti-war movement and peace movement in general. We thought you were a good guy to speak to. So I suppose we hadn't really discussed how to frame this question, but I think most or a lot of people who will be listening probably got involved in anti-war stuff around 2003. And they tried to prevent the Iraq war from happening. And so many people that I know, at least, feel that was they ended up feeling that, rather than feeling that, they got 1 million people out on the street, it was the biggest thing, of a generation, they ended up feeling very demoralized by it, as you probably know. So anyways, with that in mind, I just sort of wanted to get your take on what's happening now with Syria and the anti-war movement, how that long-term activism has panned out. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think what you were talking about is really important because, I very much sort of sat in both camps in the peace movement, and just to be clear about that, I very much came from a sort of pacifist background, a Quaker, and was involved in all sorts of direct action and things like that, and that is such an important part of my activism. But what you begin to realise when you're in the anti-war sort of peace movement is that there's then another camp which is more about marching and sort of protests and demonstrations and things. And having sort of been involved in both of these sort of areas, it's really sad, I think, that there's sort of a division in the movement, because I personally think both approaches are really important, and both sort of groups of people can learn so much from each other, and they're not at all incompatible or mutually exclusive.
Absolutely. So, and how do you think those things have informed the progress between 2003 and 2013, where we stand today, and the changes in the peace movement in the UK?
Well, I think one of the things that demonstrating does, when you get, as we literally did in 2003, millions of people on the streets, I think, that does so much for like an individual person's political education, because first of all, you realise you're not alone. You're not the only person who thinks what you're thinking. And that really is so. That end to isolation is like the first step for most people. Yeah. It's where those important sort of discussions happen, and you meet different political strands and whatever. And, that sense of exhaustion you have after a day, after a march somewhere is often not just because of the sort of the walking or the running or whatever. It's all the conversations that you've had, because you've met all sorts of different people from all walks of life. And I just think that's so important. And I think the effect that the 2003 and several marches over that period, certainly the 2 million person march, had on people was, yes, I sort of recognise what you're saying. For some people, they thought we were almost there, but we didn't do it. Maybe we should have done some more or whatever, and there's that sense of disillusionment and stuff. But I think it's important to actually look at that and, sort of assess it accurately and see just how close we did come to stopping the war. And, I don't think we should ever judge these actions in black and white categories. I think the other thing that should be mentioned is the sort of effect on the British public of the Iraq invasion and the anti-war movement. We've never had a situation like this before, when so many people have been in almost total agreement with each other, and that's on anti-war stuff right now. 78% of the population don't want a new war in the Middle East, and is that not because of such a successful anti-war movement that really persuaded people with such clarity what these wars are really about?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So in terms of what happened over the last few days, week, I forget which day is what, in terms of the UK Parliament and Syria, could you tell us a little bit about what the Stop the War take is on that?
Well, I suppose I'm speaking sort of with my Stop the War hat on, but also from a sort of personal perspective, because the nature, I guess, of Stop the War is it's a sort of broad coalition of people with quite different political perspectives on all sorts of different things. Mm-hmm. But I think what many of us have been saying is that the Thursday's vote in Parliament, where the government lost its parliamentary vote to go to war, was a real success of the anti-war movement. Lots of MPs were really feeling the pressure of public opinion, but also the mobilisation of those people as well that's happened over the last 12 years. If you look on Twitter, the number of MPs who were sort of saying, oh my God, I don't know which way to vote. That lack of confidence they had to actually vote for a new war, which they've always had, we've always had for the last 50 years, this sort of alignment with American foreign policy. To break from that alignment for the first time in decades was, in a way, a demonstration of the weakness that the establishment's in at the moment. Yeah,
and they abandoned Obama to, the Nobel Peace Prize winner to try and launch a war all by himself, didn't they?
Yeah, and
imagine that
really interesting.
Imagine that you're the president of the United States with a Nobel Peace Prize, and you sat on your throne by yourself, going, right, how can I blag a war all by myself?
Even the British won't participate.
Even the British. It's amazing because you say that. I'm glad you mentioned the 78%. Is that what it was? 78% who are opposed to a new war,
and that was a Daily Telegraph poll as well.
Right,
so I mean, a sort of lefty poll,
right? And it's but what really strikes me about this is you have, again, probably a conservative estimate about how much anti-war sentiment there is, but still 78%, and it's probably more than that. And on the other hand, though, when when we were talking about this before the show, the fact that, because you would think in a country that has that much anti-war sentiment, it wouldn't be a country that is also at the same time the fourth largest military spender in the world, one of the biggest military weapons exporters in the world, puts 1,000 times more money and energy into creating violence than it does peace. It's a striking thing to sit them next to each other when you look at it.
It is, but I don't think there's ever been a sort of time where there's been so much clarity over, what the foreign policy has been about. And I think, one of the other factors, certainly, in terms of, anti-war opinion, it's not just the sort of moral argument, sadly, I wish it was in a way, but it is that why can we afford all this money on military spending, on basically blowing people up abroad who we don't know much about, we don't know the domestic sort of arrangements in these countries or whatever, whilst we're saying, no, we can't have a universal healthcare system anymore or universal education or whatever.
Princess Di, Glasnost, Apple Pie, Karate Kid, Crisscross, Oprah, Punk Rock, Norman Tebbit on your bike, Maggie Crack the Minor Strike, North Korea, South Korea, New Kids on the Block. Falklands, Pac-Man, hostages in Iran, Olivier, Ultravox, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Wigwam, Big Bang, Pontins, Caravan, Top Gun. didn't hide it, but we tried to fight it. George Bush, John Major, Checkpoint Charlie, gone forever, apartheid, goodbye Mandela walks free. Mubarak, Hussein, Gaddafi, they all play the game. Attack Iraq, turn back, November rain. Dawkins, Tom Cruise, crazy for you let loose. Wet, 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 you bet you've been framed. Cyberpad, Brad Pitt, Berlin, Gaza's kicking 96. Chechnya, CJD, Tupac Shakur, R.I.P. We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire. No, we didn't light it, but we tried to find it. Tony Blair, DIY, bye-bye, Lady Di, Titanic, Teletubbies, Clinton and Lewinsky. 9/11, 7/7, Matt Muller's war on terror bombs on Afghanistan to rid us of the Taliban. Change, attack Iraq, millions march against that. WMD, death of Dr. Kelly. Rumsfeld, Cheney, shotgun, oh, shame on me. Gun home Monsanto, Muslims in Guantanamo. We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire. No, we didn't light it, but we tried to fight it. Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Sean Parker, Aaron Schwartz, smart cars, smartphones, Obama sending killer drones. Subprime, bubble pop, bailout starts to run. Halliburton, Blackwater, ABN AMRO. Coalition UK, cut the safety nets away. RIP, Blighty, Cameron's big society. We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire. No, we didn't light it, but we tried to fight it. Zimmerman, Trayvon, civil rights, all but gone. School to prison pipeline, heard it on the grapevine. Begging, busking, squatting, not a pot to piss in. Bedroom tax, welfare acts, interns dead from heart attacks. Wages down, prices up, rulers couldn't give a fuck. Gaslands, tar sands, climate chaos, boy band. Palestine, Syria, Egypt and Tunisia. Snowden, Manning, WikiLeaks, time for us to hit the street. We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire, but when we are gone, will it still burn on and on and on and on? We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire.